Family Guy made me feel things. You ever sit down to watch Family Guy fully expecting fart jokes and Peter to fight a giant chicken, and then suddenly you're sitting there emotional? Like actually emotional?
Stop it. Please stop. Stop.
Am I crying? Yeah, today we're going to talk about that episode. Two things Family Guy is best at: musical numbers and obscure pop culture references. We can all tell recent episodes of Family Guy have fallen from what they used to be. I don't have to tell you. The bar is literally in hell.
Careful, don't get anything on the seats.
Okay, into the eternal pit of fire you go.
But here's the thing. The early seasons of Family Guy, those have some gems. We all know that. So those are the episodes I want to look at. This video also marks the first in the series where I look at some of Family Guy's best episodes just because I love that golden era of Family Guy. Starting with this one, an episode that's been my personal favorite, and an episode that won an Emmy. It made you feel things. This is Family Guy's most heartfelt episode. If you like to take a deep dive into pop culture and you enjoy dissecting TV shows, movies, games, all that, please like and subscribe.
Next item. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to join these two in holy matrimony. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Quiet down, you had your chance.
Brian wallows and Peter swallows. The episode. The A plot of the episode follows Brian finding love in places he never expected, and Peter does the same in the B plot, but with a beard. The episode starts with Brian going on a date with a young lady who doesn't share interests with Brian, let's say that.
And the use of recitative throughout. Mozart was a genius.
Oh yeah, recitative is really, where it's at.
And yeah, sometimes Brian comes across as a pompous know-it-all snob, but still, the early seasons showed Brian had a genuine love for the arts.
I'm also glad we met the second time around.
So when he realizes his date doesn't have that same passion, he kinda checks out mentally, resigning himself to just enduring the night. Brian comes home and Lois, who, you remember she used to teach piano sometimes? She's teaching a kid how to play piano. Lois calls Brian out for being too picky with women.
Brian, your standards are ridiculously high. You'll never find a girl unless you're willing to make exceptions and compromise so you can find your love.
The scene turns into a pleasant musical joke as Lois keeps trying to have a conversation while teaching piano, so they talk over the melody.
Lois, I don't think I have to compromise a thing. I'd rather be alone than with someone who doesn't get me. Oh, and how long has the coffee been on the burner in the kitchen? I could really use a cup about now.
And when the student finally stops playing and Lois tries to address Brian directly, Brian kind of doubles down on the bit.
So what is it, Brian? You don't think these women understand you?
You know, Lois, I'm really not comfortable talking about this amelodically.
Meanwhile, Peter's storyline kicks off while he's watching an episode of Grizzly Adams on TV. Inspired by the 70s show, which, if I'm being honest, I had to Google. While watching the show, Peter decides he's going to grow a beard, despite Lois being against it. Lois is still trying to help Brian out of his funk, so she says he should tag along with Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire to a laser rock show at the Quahog Planetarium. So Peter and Brian roll up to the planetarium with Cleveland and Quagmire for the laser rock show. Peter's trying his best and he's trying to cheer Brian up, but Brian just is not in the mood. So the gang wanders through the planetarium exhibits, and this entire sequence is purely early Family Guy nonsense. First, we have the binary code exhibit with Helen Keller.
011010001.
011010001.
0101.
And then there's the miracle electricity, with an old dude just pulling a light switch. And then finally, we get a VR virtual reality headset demo, which feels like just another gag at first, but it quietly sets up one of the biggest emotional payoffs in the episode. Quagmire's VR fantasy set has him as a stripper pole, and then it turns out it's actually a fireman's pole. Peter, meanwhile, is flying in the most Peter Griffin way.
Oh my God, I'm flying! I'm flying!
Yes, I'll have a diet Sprite.
The four of them go to the theater to watch the laser rock show, and Brian starts looking around. Everywhere he looks, he sees people are coupled up. He's feeling a little solo dolo. He even sees Mayor West.
You are a filthy whore.
Already spiraling, Brian starts drinking in the theater, and then we transition to Brian drinking while driving them home. While they're joking around, Brian, clearly drunk, gets pulled over by Joe. Joe points out Brian swerving, holds a lighter to Brian's face, and Brian breathes literal fire at him. Joe, in typical fashion, lets Peter drive even though the floor is littered with beer cans. Mind you, Joe agrees to meet with the gang at the bar later, and then tells Brian how disgusted he is with him. Cut to 1 month later, and Brian's now in court. Lois tries her best to console him, but Stewie's not having that.
It's okay, Brian. You'll get through this DUI and you'll be a better person for it.
But hold on a minute. Don't disguise his alcohol dependence as a ticket to self-realization.
Peter's at trial too for Brian, now with a scruffy beard that Lois hates with a passion. The judge finds Brian guilty and sentences him to 100 hours of community service. Later at dinner, Brian talks about what his punishment is. He's been assigned to the Outreach to the Elderly program, where he's going to be taking care of an old shut-in. The next day, Brian goes over there to meet Pearl, and things go downhill immediately. First, when he steps inside, she douses him with some type of powder. Brian's confused and annoyed, but Pearl doesn't miss a beat.
It's gonna burn like hell in 30 seconds. Now I like my tea at 4, my dinner at 6. And I take my bath at 7 sharp so I can listen to Paul Harvey. By the way, it's been 30 seconds.
Meanwhile, the family's out to dinner at the chicken coop. Peter cannot stop scratching his beard. Felt that. I feel that. Lois asked Brian how his community service is going. Brian said,
Oh, Lois, it's horrible. I was cleaning her house all day. It's the worst job I've ever had. Well, except for one. Excuse me, would you like to taste my smoked meat log?
Back at the table, Peter gets a crumb in his beard, and out of nowhere, a bird swoops in, snatches it from his face, and the whole family starts freaking out. The bird doesn't stop there though. It goes inside his beard and then starts pecking at Peter's nose. When Lois goes to intervene and remove the bird, a member of the Quahog's bird community, I can't say that word, steps in to deliver some bad news. The bird is an endangered species, and once it's chosen a nesting spot, it's illegal to remove it. Back at Pearl's house, Brian is just dealing with everything she throws at him. He's trying to do his chores, but Pearl is just the worst. She's awful.
What is this, diarrhea soup?
Look, I'm not making you anything else, so just eat it, all right?
Fine, then I'll have to call the judge, and that means you'll go to jail. You're one phone call away from getting a human booster shot from a guy named Molly.
What?
We come back to Peter at the movies trying to enjoy popcorn, but the bird in his beard keeps stealing his popcorn. Suddenly the bird starts chirping loudly, and the people around him are not happy. Thankfully, the bird stops eventually. Later that night, Peter and Lois are in bed about to woohoo. All of a sudden, the bird bites Lois on the tongue, and Peter's over it. Meanwhile, back at Pearl's, Brian is changing a light bulb when he hears her scream. He immediately panics and bolts over to her side, only to realize she was testing him. Completely done with this entire situation, Brian finally unloads.
That's it! I have had it with you, you old hag! You're just a miserable, dried-up shut-in trying to make everyone else feel as bad as you do. Why don't you do the world a big favor and drop dead?
And because Family Guy can never end on a serious note, we have a really hilarious and awkward exchange at the end.
This last one won't open.
Oh, you had to jiggle it a little bit.
Like this?
Nah, yeah, let me get it.
Oh, thanks. And drop dead.
And it's honestly cute in its own way. Family Guy's not supposed to be deep. I'm here for laughs, so yeah, let's end the scene on a laugh. Going back to the Griffin house, Peter is now blasting heavy rock with his face right in front of the stereo, trying to smoke the bird out with sound waves. When that doesn't work, Peter pulls out a gun and shoves it into his own beard, and Lois runs in, like, stop. The gun goes off in their struggle, shattering the window. The bird flies out the shattered window, and they think, oh, cool, solution, everything's fine. And then they hear chirping, and they find 3 baby birds hatched in his beard. In classic Peter fashion, he looks down at them and visualizes his kids.
And, sweet.
That night, they're watching an E's Mystery and Scandals when Brian gets an unexpected revelation about Pearl. Turns out, she was a baddie. She used to have the voice of an angel. She was a huge name back in the 50s and 60s, famous for her commercial jingles. Pearl once tried to take the leap from jingles to opera, but the crowd heckled her mid-performance. She fled the stage and basically went into hiding for 30 years. Horrified, Brian runs back over to Pearl's house just in time to see her standing on a chair about to hang herself. Brian rushes over to save her, and then tells her he watched about her story on TV and he heard her sing, and it was the most beautiful thing he's ever heard. Pearl, touched and kind of stunned, tells Brian that he's the first person who ever complimented her habanera. They make plans to see each other the next day, even though Brian's not scheduled. Ooh, love's in the air. Meanwhile, Peter is gone full bird dad. He takes the babies on a picnic, he buys them milkshakes, he brushes their teeth, he even tucks them in before bed reading them a book.
And then the cow came out of the barn. See, look, there's the cow. And what does a cow say? Yes, that's right. A cow says beep, 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 beep.
Of course, the downside is he's covered in poop. On his beard, on his shirt, just bird poop everywhere. Lois approaches Peter with some motherly advice.
So every good mother knows when it's time for her babies to leave the nest.
Hey, they're free to go anytime they want. Ah! Fine, I'll let them go.
He's resistant, but he accepts that the birds have to fly the coop. Back at Pearl's, Brian listens to her sing. He's completely enamored, calling her an angel. Pearl asks Brian what he wants for dinner, and Brian said he wants to go out. Pearl hesitates because she hasn't left the house in a decade, but Brian encourages her, telling her that there's so much she's missed by being inside all these years, and he tells her through a song. The song ends with Pearl newly inspired. She's ready to take her first steps outside in 3 decades. Unfortunately, she forgets the single most important part of going outside, looking both ways before crossing the street.
I wouldn't be standing here right now if it wasn't for you.
At the hospital, Brian visits Pearl, and she confirms the obvious. She's dying. But even with this grim reality, Pearl tells Brian that this has been the best day of her life. She just wishes that they had more time. Brian, determined to give her that time, pulls out the VR headset from the planetarium earlier in the episode. What follows is a genuinely heartfelt montage that juxtaposes Peter's and Brian's story together in a really somber way. Back to virtual reality, Brian and Pearl sit together on a porch, watching the sunset, just enjoying the quiet time. And finally, Brian takes the goggles off and Pearl is passed. Now, of course, because it's Family Guy, we still need, one more joke.
Hey, who wants to see a dead body?
Later that night at the bar, Peter and Brian are sitting together, quietly processing their own little heartbreaks. Peter notices an attractive woman checking Brian out. Brian notices too, but shakes his head. Brian then points out that Peter's getting looks as well. What the hell? Peter gives Brian a similar response. And the episode ends on a somber tone. Why it's my favorite. Brian wallows and Peter swallows isn't just funny. It's emotionally layered, it's character driven, and it's surprisingly mature underneath all the chaos and boob jokes. Let's break down why I like this. At first, Brian's storyline seems like the classic Brian complains about dating material. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. But this time the show takes it somewhere deeper. Brian starts the episode being his usual self, self-righteous, a know-it-all, emotionally closed off. The unwillingness to date outside his impossible standards, and drinking the coke. But when he gets assigned the community service with Pearl, the show does something rare. It forces Brian into this closeness with another flawed person. And first there's bickering, there's insults, and there's literal powder burns. Brian hates her. But then he sees the special on TV and he understands why Pearl is the way she is. That's when he comes around. The emotional payoff from the habanero compliment to the VR goodbye. It all feels earned. The VR montage especially stands out. The fact that Family Guy pauses for like a full minute to let you feel this emotional moment without jokes. Mixing in it, Peter learning a lesson as well. Speaking of Peter, the B plot could have easily been a throwaway filler, but it ends up quietly mirroring Brian's journey. Peter doesn't go looking for love or responsibility. All he wants to do is grow a beard. That's it. And then a bird makes a nest in that beard. Suddenly he's raising 3 babies. The escalation is crazy.
Hey, you're getting some looks yourself.
I'm not ready either.
This episode is the blueprint for when Family Guy mixes heart and stupidity perfectly. It lets Brian actually grow, and it gives Peter just enough sincerity that you kinda root for him. If you're ranking best episodes of Family Guy, this absolutely deserves to be top 10. It's crude, it's weird, and it's occasionally dark, but above all else, it has heart. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite episode of Family Guy is. Did this one hit you the same way it hit me, or am I tripping? Drop a comment, let me know, tell me how you feel, and if you like deep dives that mix comedy and analysis, go ahead and hit the like button, consider subscribing. Next up, I am starting an Attack on Titan retrospective season by season. I just watched it. I am rewatching it again. I was that much enamored with it that I need to talk about it, so you will be hearing my opinions. Thanks for watching, guys. Love you.